Motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Opposed?
Approved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Roll call. Planning board? No. Recreation?
Kurt Annan here.
Housing?
Joe Perry here.
Recreation?
You already covered that.
Twice. In one line. Board of Selectmen? Open space? Historic district? Concom?
Here, Kurt Turner.
Hello, David. David's here.
David's here.
Planning board. Okay.
So we're missing Brett Elder
We have
and Cliff.
Cliff's as far away, I understand. Planning board, okay. Legal ads.
All taken care of, just needs to be signed.
I notice you're blocked out. Everybody
That's
down getting the
smart.
wrong roll.
That is smart.
Live and learn.
Let's see. Evening, David.
I'm here. Barely.
Are you sure?
I've really been around for a couple of days.
Give it back. Yeah, David's gonna sign it.
Circle and initial the attachment.
I signed the one on top.
Yep, he did review me.
Is there a second sheet there? Just one sheet, isn't it?
You good?
She said you already did.
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. It's also been duly posted with the town clerk and the website. The minutes. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Stop right there, please. Anticipating that might happen, I have the signed final ones for you to give to Karen.
Can we pass it back through?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
While we're on the business part of this here, Joe, does everything fit into what you thought? You made a little speech there last time on open meeting laws and all this stuff.
We've been following the rules.
Okay.
It's looking good.
Well, I knew you'd notice as a school teacher. Okay.
I think I know guy is here. He needs to be introduced.
Oh, who is he?
First meeting.
Brett.
Brett Alger.
Joe Perry.
Nice to meet you, Joe.
Frank Todd.
Nice to meet you.
I have a cold, so I probably shouldn't
Okay.
shake your hand.
Well, you're gonna
Kurt
pass
Turner,
it.
Brett. How are you doing?
Nice.
David Jakewith.
Nice to meet
Planning.
you.
We've met before.
I'm good.
Karen hears from me quite a bit.
Okay. Okay, we'd like to welcome our guest, Mr. Peterson and Mr. Jalbert. Okay, the agenda. Open space and recreational plan, a continuance. Would you like to speak to that? Good.
Me?
Well, since you're
Sure.
part of the conservation.
Well, we approved the expenditure, of, what was it, $15,000
Yes.
at the last meeting, and then there was a question as to whether that could come from administrative funds, and I believe that Karen was going to research that.
Yep, in your packet, there should be a email. And I spoke with Don Gorton, the lawyer, the day at the Department of Revenue,
Okay,
and asked him specifically the question on whether it could be paid out of the administrative fund, or was it subject to a town vote? I went back through the emails that previously he had been supplied through the CPAC, and he said that he had similar information in email format, but there was no IGR in place as it's subject to interpretation. He did explain that once administrative expenses have been appropriated at town meeting, they can be spent on operating expenses. The funds do not need to be appropriated at town meeting again for expenditures as it was outlined in the guideline below. But when we spoke about the specific project, he
Right.
believed that it was more in line with a project and not as an administrative expense.
okay.
So. that was-
Now, I was thinking about that as well, and my belief is that in the past, we've used administrative funds to fund engineering studies, to prepare things for town meeting. And it seems to me that would be still a legitimate expense, but since this is a self-contained project in itself, I could see where the town meeting might need to approve it.
Right, this is a project unto itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that the email does
Okay,
support your
okay.
statement.
So, since, I had done the research on it, I wrote out an article for special town meeting
Okay.
so that we could vote on that.
Anything more to add to that, Trent?
No, I think that, the warrant article that she's proposing that we sign looked appropriate to me, and I guess I would move that we vote it.
Okay, I'll accept the motion.
Well, I'm sorry, what was that?
To approve the town
warrant
warrant article wording, of the draft wording that
You
Karen
have it in your
prepared.
package.
It's towards the bottom.
Where is it?
Towards
It's
the
towards the
bottom.
bottom.
Towards the bottom.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okey-dokey. Number 2, Mahaffey Farm Conservation Restriction. Vanessa Hall called from Greenbelt and said they would like to postpone the meeting until the fall town meeting.
Is the fall town meeting a sure thing?
Well, if there is,
There wasn't one last year.
okay.
The answer to that is no.
So
It's
been
not a sure thing.
pushed over, so I'll accept the motion to push it over till a later meeting.
I'll move to continue it to the next future meeting where it would be appropriate to consider it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Back to the Mahaffey Farm. They would like a continuance also. So I'll accept a motion on that one.
Isn't that what we just did?
Hmm?
Was that what we just did, or?
No, we did I thought we did this one. Oh,
Yeah, I think we did Mahaffey Farm.
Mahaffey Farm, I'm sorry, Pingree
Pingree.
Farm area bridge
Yep,
did pass.
they want a continuance also.
Well, she isn't here, so we'll continue it.
She sent an email saying that she would get back to the board at a future date, that she had more work to do.
She had more, okay.
I make a motion that we continue it to a future date.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, cemetery trees. There's a letter here from the Board of Selectmen. Signed in somewhere. There it is. Okay. Community Preservation Committee, attention. Bill Frank Todd, Chairman. RE Community Preservation Committee, Physical 17 articles. Dear Mr. Todd, on March 8, 2016, the Board of Selectmen reviewed the articles submitted by the Community Preservation Committee for Physical 17. A copy of the articles is enclosed. The Board voted to support the standard appropriation article that was submitted. The Board does not support the article for the restoration of 10 trees in the cemetery for the reasons below, and voted to send this article back to the CPC for reconsideration. A few years ago, CPA funds were used to restore the historic beech tree in the cemetery. CPA funds were also used to purchase and plant trees on the town common under a well-established historical restoration plan. Although the Board supports the concept of planting new trees in the cemetery, the historical connection is unclear, and therefore the use of CPA money for this project is questionable. The use of the word restoration in the article language is also questionable, as the Board understands that there are no trees in the proposed locations previously, nor are there any historical trees being restored. The Board feels that this project appears to be a capital project, and an appropriate source of funding would be the cemetery's revolving fund. Signed, Amy Leiden. Okay, David?
Yeah, well, basically, the situation is that, our administrator said when we did the common, there's all kinds of pictures of what the trees look like. Trees died over the years from, I assume they were all elm trees, I can't remember for sure, but
They were all elms,
they were all elms. I know,
American elms.
coming down to Marblehead and Salem where I grew up, streets were lined with elms. So the intent over there on the common was to try to replicate to some degree, the greatest degree possible, the trees as they were originally set there, and along with that we did the lights, etc. On the cemetery, a couple issues really is there's no plan as to what historical trees or what did the cemetery look like, 100 years ago. Basically, it's just the cemetery commission wants to plant 10 trees, and according to the explanation in the article, they want to do 10 trees for the next 10 years, so we're going to spend $80,000 of CPA money, I assume, each year. They'll come back here looking for another appropriation to put 80 trees in there. And I'm not sure, just to scatter them around the cemetery.
There's no plan.
There's no plan, and I'm sure and you were here, I wasn't. I'm sure that if we looked up and down the streets of Raleigh back many, many, many years ago when the elm trees were all alive and well, that there were probably elm trees up and down many streets. And I'm not sure how many people are going to drive into the cemetery to look at flowering pear trees. And if it should be a budgetary item, If they want to put the trees in, we have better use for CPA money than planting trees at this point. That the cemetery should make that a capital project, the same as we would if we were going to put trees up and down Central Street or any place else. If the common was a particular project for a particular restoration, obviously the tree that you appropriated or we appropriated money for in the cemetery, that particular tree was I think it's a couple hundred years old. And that was obviously our restoration of a historic tree that we didn't want to lose. And I think we just want to, as far as the selectmen are concerned, we're concerned about the long-range project of end up spending $80,000 over time. And it's not really a restoration. There's no plan in place. And I think the selectmen like to see, as with all these projects, if we're going to approve them, we need to have a plan that we can stand in front of town meeting and support and stand by the requirements of the law here. So we just felt that if the cemetery wants to do that, then they can certainly come in and talk to everybody. But CPA funds are better off being spent in other areas.
The original plan out here, and Zephyr Rogers, Stone, and Samuel Phillips, and all of those, that was done, I think, by the Ladies Benevolent Society, the Congregational Church, back around 1880. And all those Norway spruces, all of that was part of that. There has been a row of sugar maples along the right side, if you go over and go down, before the addition out there, Eldon Bradstreet's chicken coops, in that line there. But that was the end of the property in the old days. When I came back from Iowa, back around 1960, I went to the selectmen and I asked them, I said, if I can talk Eldon Bradstreet into selling the backland where the chicken coops are for $5,000, would you accept that? And Mel Keane was chairman, I think, then, and he said, yeah. So they did, and that's where that piece of property came from. But it was, as I say, it was originally all chicken coops back there. And, but that's the row of sugars down that one side. Well, there was a big one right out here that died here a few years ago, and there's some other back one in there. But there's more down in there. But sugar maples and Norway spruces were the only really trees that were planted here. And so, as far as working on this beech tree out here, Howard Gaff and I were standing there at the Memorial Day parade, and we were discussing the tree. So the whole point was, if we could run a cable down on certain branches, so if they let go, they wouldn't bust the gravestones. That was the purpose of that.
Right. That was a good expense.
Yeah. So if you look around Raleigh, how many beech trees do you see? There's one down almost two houses short of Salt Marsh, and there used to be one up there in front of Frank Romano's, and
oh, really?
those are English beech, and much I can tell you. But that's a big tree.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful. We don't want to lose that one if we can help it. It's held up well over the years with all the storms and the wind and the hurricanes and everything else. That tree is one strong specimen that sits there, and we definitely want to preserve that as much as we can.
True. But as far as the cemetery, I spoke with Sam Strife. His brother's the one that's kind of pushing it. He was up in Boston. But, who's the other one there? Page, Arthur Page. But I mean, it should have a plan, and then you'll know what you're doing. And $1,000 a tree. I brought the catalog with me. If you buy them wholesale, the prices on wholesale on Collis Brothers, you're talking say $400 a tree. And if you go up to Chichester in New Hampshire there and talk to them, you can have it for a third of that, a third less than that.
I'll say that my experience at Fox Meadows, where because the tree planting had to be done through the town bond fund, came at roughly $1,000 a tree because of the prevailing wage consideration. And so I don't think that's out of line for doing prevailing wage. And in fact, when we had the work, Corliss is the only one that did it, because whether it was that other landscapers didn't want to deal with the prevailing wage requirement, I'm not sure. But
it's usually, if you're bidding a job, you double the wholesale price, and that includes in the ground.
mm-hmm.
And a year's guarantee. That's what landscapers get. Okay.
I'd just like to say that I agree with you that there should be a plan on it, but whether it's historic or not, it's open green space, and cemeteries throughout the country are treated as cemeteries and open space, such as
Treated as both.
yeah, and if they have a good plan, and there is no other available funds to plant it, then we can come up with a planting plan that I think should be supported in that sense, because it's pretty bleak out there. And there are live people that do go into the cemetery. And
Are you sure?
I am sure, because I've been there. I know the soil's not good for you.
No, but it's historic, the cemetery, and I got ancestors planted in the front row out here, and they keep telling me there's room for more, but
The ancestors of the cemetery.
But it certainly needs to have a long-range plan so that money could be spaced out in a proper manner so that you don't get surprised with funds ongoing, and a mixture of trees, I think, too.
well, would you accept the thought that it needs a little plan?
I think it needs a bigger plan than a little plan.
A little
It
planning.
needs a plan.
Okay. Everybody agree with that?
I think it needs a plan, but I think it's not restoration of historic trees.
I agree with that, but I also know that there's a number of places where there were historic trees.
And it's
And you're-
also can be categorized as green space, and almost falls into the recreational category with a stretch, so. But
Okay.
it needs a plan first.
Okay, we all agree it needs a plan. All righty,
I'm prepared to make a motion
good.
that in consideration of the discussion and the Board of Selectmen's request to reconsider, I move that we reconsider with a negative recommendation to fund this, basically changing our position, and that we await submission of a plan along the lines discussed if the Cemetery Commission wishes to pursue this further.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick comment. That
Yes.
It's important that when these different boards decide they would like to get funding, that they talk to the town administrator, because she kind of reviews these things, and she can let people know she's not the final arbiter, but she can kind of direct people in the right direction, and so that when it comes here, there's a plan in place, and you guys, your board has a chance to look at a complete plan and debate the merits up and down for funding. At least lately it seems like there's a lot of projects coming in that are just like nobody knows much about them. they get presented to you for funding before the town really has a chance to even look at them. This is one of them that come in like out of the blue. I had no idea until I watched your last meeting on television. This was even coming up. I think it's got to be a better communication between the board and the town administrator, who's in charge of procurement, and making sure that these things are legally done, because they also have to be run by town council. So it's important that we get everything squared away so that it's a smooth process. Thank you.
Do we need to withdraw our approval of the town meeting article? I'm not sure if your wording had that in there.
I assume that's what Kurt did, but I
I
don't.
thought that's what Kurt did.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
No, if we negatively reconsider this, then it's off the board and it just won't be submitted, I assume, to town meeting or to the selectmen
Right.
further.
It won't be on the warrant.
Okay. I think we voted on that, didn't we?
Yes.
Okay, the next item is to consider reserving the Bradstreet property sales for final bond payments, where we had 5 years in reserve on that, and David took it out for the Girl Scout camp. What we would consider doing is to take the property there that Sabatini paid and others, put in for the, make it part of the final bonding of the property. Use that money for the final bonding.
Yeah, I don't know the legalities of it, so,
Well, we had money, we had 5 years in the bank,
right.
and you spotted it.
Well, your last meeting, I think it was Kurt that talked about keeping that 240 or whatever it is
Yeah.
in reserve towards the future purchase. I'm not sure if Karen can, pay down that loan and reduce the interest. I think that's something that maybe you can request the treasurer to take a look at and see the possibilities of if that can be done. I don't know the legalities of it.
If I could respond according to my recollection of events and some perspective on the legalities. I'm not an attorney, but that amount, talking with the town treasurer, is a limbo item that has to do with matters pertaining to the bonding of the Bradstreet property, and that there are legal issues involved in this, and that it's the opinion of the treasurer that these funds should not be used for anything. Now, the CPA Act requires that any monies under these circumstances come back to the CPA and not be used for general purposes unless we vote them out again for some reason. And it would make sense to me that since these proceeds came from the sale of Bradstreet, it would make sense that they be applied to the Bradstreet payment, and I was originally pushing that they be applied either retroactively to the payments that we have made since this came up, or in the next future one. But in view of the uncertainties about the whole situation, I think it would make sense to, rather than just show it as proceeds from sale of Bradstreet, that it shows at least on our books, our records or our vote, that these funds should be used to, as a set aside of the reserve, to pay the final payment or payments on Bradstreet till those funds are used up, working backwards. Looks like there's maybe about one payment there in principal and interest, but it might be slightly more than that.
Well, you got more property to be sold down there. Housing, duplex housing, or whatever it is.
You mean affordable housing?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't necessarily, this gets into a whole subject of affordable housing. And one of the ways that the same question comes up, I understand, if something is done with regard to the sale of that land for affordable housing purposes, and that can be avoided as well until the Bradstreet stuff is paid off by instead of selling a piece of property down there for affordable housing for a nominal amount such as $1 or something, that it'd be leased for a period of time at the same nominal amount, $1 a year, until such time as the Bradstreet indebtedness is paid off. So the two questions aren't unrelated. They generally tie, and the same problem exists. So that problem can be avoided by waiting until the Bradstreet is paid off and doing things along those lines. Anyway, I would move that we do reserve those funds for the final payment or payments on the Bradstreet property, and not consider them as available to us until then, and that will commit them to that purpose anyway, so that they'd be wiped off the books at the end of that time, and would resolve the problem that the Treasurer's Office would have. So, you're shaking your head no, or just?
No,
No. So that would be my motion, that we do consider that a reserve and show it on these records as a reserve for that purpose.
Is the Bradstreet just a question, Bradstreet a 20-year payment?
I don't know how much longer we had on the Bradstreet.
I don't know the year.
I believe it was a 20-year payment.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not positive, but I believe it was. She tries to keep things at 20 if she can.
We must be close to, I don't know, 8-10 years already having made payments already.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You passed up.
I could ask Norbs.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any discussion?
So we're reserving the $284,900.
Do we, one question, do we know if the terms of the loan allow a prepayment on principal? That would substantially cut our interest payments over the years. And
I don't think they do.
okay.
I think I asked that at one point.
Okay, any
So
more?
there's no benefit paying off early.
I don't believe so. I mean, the bondholders have debt instruments that indicate they're going to get a certain amount of interest over a certain period of time, and assuming our credit rating is high, it doesn't go down too, but they would probably want to keep collecting that. If you'd have to get them all together, and maybe it's all held by one bank, I don't know, but you could probably negotiate a present value of that indebtedness if if we had lots of money and we'd have to spend that up front and require a large lump sum, and hopefully something less than everything that's outstanding if it carried to maturity.
Just a quick comment, if I may. Over the years, the treasurer generally restructures a lot of these loans based on interest rates more than anything else. In other words, when we borrowed at high rates and the rates dropped, then obviously she restructures them so that we can take advantage of the lower rates. But this already is at I'm sure, a minimal rate. It was bought at the time when the rates have been real low anyway. So I'm not sure about the prepayment.
Any more discussion? Very quiet. Okay.
Motion's been made and seconded, we need a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. This thing that came out here from Catherine Ross on how money can be spent. Have you all looked that over?
We already discussed that.
The Don Cotton lawyer business?
That had to do with Frank's proposal from conservation.
Yeah. Well, that leads into the next one. It's pre-application form. What can be and what can't be. It's kind of a chart. And it's what I'm doing is I'm leading up into something else here. And I was looking at this, and And then I was looking at the qualifying historic projects for CPA funding. And these are important. And what I think is I was looking at these other towns you put in here, Essex and West Newbury and Hamilton, Wenham, and Canton, and Newburyport, I guess the other one was. And looking at it is, I noticed some of them have as much as 120 days. You have to submit it 120 days in advance, and others 90 days in advance. Otherwise, you just can't come up with it. And there's another line in there that I caught, that if you people can come in and talk at a meeting saying what they have in mind, and they can get guidance that way, and then come in and try to, present what they're after. And so I thought that was pretty interesting because it had a lot to say, but 120 days, that's 4 months in advance. So you can't just watch the TV and then come in and say, oh, can't do that. But that's a long time, and what that would do is require regular meetings and things like that. And what I've tried to do is have the meetings set up so that we were ahead of the town meeting, and people had talked things out, and that worked. Then it was just kind of an ongoing thing. It was progress or progression. And I don't know, what I wanted to do was ask how you people would like to do it. Do you want to have a meeting every month? Do you want to have a meeting periodically? Do you want to, like we do now?
May I?
Yes, ma'am.
So one of the things that I have been working on all along is kind of watching and seeing how the board works and trying to find my place as far as what your needs are and what the needs of the community are overall. And what I've seen is a lot of people coming to the board, but unfortunately spending a lot of time with the board, but not finding good end results is probably the nicest way to say it. And if there was some kind of timeline or guideline with the board, then there would be a clear progression of what needs to happen next. And I think that the projects that you've completed and done over the years are amazing, but over the last few years, there just seems to be a disconnect between how all the boards, you have a great representation across all of these boards, and all of these people are coming to your boards, and if you each were to take that and sponsor it and bring it to this board, we could vet out the process and make it more seamless so that when they're coming in to see us, it's kind of those last little pieces. So I put together this vetting process, and it's something you should all read over and decide if that's the way you want to move, but it will take a lot of the pain and out of the process. I mean, Sonia wanted to build a boardwalk, and she has a great project, and her coming in and talking with all of us a few months ago, she was able to learn so much from each one of us so that she could take that knowledge back and say, okay, this is how I need to work. And she's a smart lady. She's done great with what she wants to do. But what really needs to happen is, and this is my view, is the Conservation Commission owns that land, so they need to be the ones sponsoring Sonia to come forward. And there are bridge projects out there, out at Clark Beach at the end of Bowden Road. They built this bridge back in 2008 over in Ipswich. They built this bridge over this, it's a tiny little creek. And I actually reached out to the Association of Great Neck to get more information about it. And it may be able to help her with the project. But the thing is I haven't been utilized to help you all to do research on projects, to bring you the information that you might need to establish whether it's a project that should move forward. I think I have a lot of great talents that this board could be utilizing that are not being utilized. And I think you could take a lot of pain out of the people that are coming in front of the board.
Effectively use you as both a guide and a pre-screening process.
She's the,
Right.
be the,
Yeah.
be the point.
And I think that's a great idea. I don't think that translates into more meetings. I'm personally reluctant to have more meetings, but
But I think that you
I
do
can
need to
second that.
establish some kind of timeline. So if you are going to say it's a project for the fall meeting, and we know that the fall meeting falls on a certain date, or around a certain date every year, you can push back and put on the website, fall submissions are due by this date, and then you can work backwards from there. I mean, that, you have to give some kind of guidance. This is not working.
Mr. Chairman?
you know, my personal preference is we're a small enough town that we can be flexible, but I think rather than making it a hard deadline like 6 months in advance,
Right.
say that projects typically need to come before or be presented, say to you, at least 6 months ahead of time to go through the proper screening and vetting. And that way, if somebody comes in at the last minute, they're aware it probably won't, you know, they probably won't succeed.
Right, or that they need more time, or they
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to go in front of another board.
I think it's important that we begin to talk about the process for application, and that looking at the Hamilton one, and we may be able to put together ideas and tune it to our own use, rather than adopting anything right off the bat. But I think it's something that, you know, it could help us in having, maybe not more meetings, but having constructive meetings. And not having people come in and just say, throw a project out at us, you know, that
Right.
we didn't know anything about.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I kind of look at this as, you're basically a bank, you're not a project manager. So that, as I see it, that someone should be bringing to you as their, probably next to the last step, a completed project. And depending on what the purview is, whether it's recreation, or it's open space, or conservation, or historic, that whoever is bringing the project in is vetted it and gone through the details with whatever particular board, and that board should come in with support for the project. So in other words, you take the bridge as an example, and you know, it is conservation land. It would be conservation's project under our guidelines, so that the person that wants to do this needs to work out all the details with conservation first. I mean, I know she talked to Debbie at Town Hall, she's talked to you people, she's talked to conservation. I went over and walked that land today just to see. Right around the corner from my house, I'd never been out there. So today was a nice day, I went out there. It's a beautiful piece of property out there. And I saw where the bridge would go. Well, there's 4 feet of water where that bridge is going to go. So it's going to be a complicated project, for example. And when I was out there, I called Brent at the Conservation Commission just to make sure I was looking at the right location and the right spot. And he said, well, he's still talking to her about plans. So, I mean, she's nowhere near ready. She's searching around for information and stuff like that. And my feeling, my personal feeling is that when they come here, they should have a project on paper, similar to what we're talking about with the trees for the cemetery. Whatever department, whatever person, whatever board wants to come in with a project, they should have basically 99.5% completed, and then if few people have concerns, once your concerns are satisfied, then you either vote to fund or not fund. In most cases, you're probably going to fund it. If it's gotten to that point, it's gone through all these boards, you're probably going to fund it if you've got funds available. So I just think it's important that we have people going from spot to spot, place to place, and kind of getting shunted around. And I think it's important that you people have a process so that when people come in looking for funds, that you can say, okay, here's a form, your project is related to this, go talk to conservation or go talk to historic. That's all. I think it'll go much better for your board that way.
Yeah, so I joined the Open Space Committee in the fall. This is my first meeting here, obviously, and I can speak a little bit more to the confusion that surrounds that specific project. So I think part of it is distinguishing between doing the project itself, and I think at some point Sonia's tried to, or was suggested that she acquire funds to even get the engineering plans to do the project. And so we've gotten in the situation with that group as like a horse in a cart. You can't do the project until you have engineered plans, but nobody knows what the project's going to look like because you don't have engineered plans. And
that was the point I was going to make insofar as I agree with your idea that they should go before the relevant town boards, but for something like the bridge project, we probably do need some funds to do the engineering study, and that's relevant to what Karen found out earlier, where we can use our administrative funds to do, let's say, an engineering study for a project as long as we think it has merit. And so I don't think it needs to, because you're right, there's no way she's going to come with a 99% plan because nobody's willing to work for free to do that kind of detailed work.
Right.
But hearing this conversation is reaffirming for me, since I'm not only learning all of this, but it has been difficult as kind of a tag along with Sonia to try and figure out, like, okay, how do you get a project from an idea to implementation? And I know she's come, I think she came here once, right?
Right.
Maybe going to come, and then I know she went to the Conservation Commission and did a presentation, and we're getting our feet wet.
Depending on the spot, this is as you said, this is conservation. We don't want to debate this project tonight, but it's conservation land. Therefore, any building that goes on out there is under the guidance and control of the Conservation Commission. So therefore, before she comes to this board, she should have the full support of the Conservation Commission. Now, if the Conservation Commission decides that they need some money for engineering, for instance, or for planning, then they would come to you and say, we have this project in line, we need, $5,000, whatever it is for the engineer, and then you people would vote on that. And then once the plans are drawn, then you'd move to the next step of coming back for funding of the building of the project. I just get the impression that we get a lot of people the last couple of years running around, really not knowing what they're doing, and they're coming here looking for money, and every other town boards, including the selectmen and the town administrator, are saying, wait a minute, where'd that come from? And I think we need to eliminate that for our use, but also for someone that comes in, a citizen or a board or whatever that wants to utilize the services of the town, needs to know what the process is and feel comfortable that they're getting the information they need to make the project go forward. So I think having a procedure on paper that people come in looking for money, and here's our general procedure, and you can always, time limits are, I don't think you need more than 90 days. If they come in with a complete project, anything more than 90 days is unnecessary, other than just to make sure that, it takes 30 or 40 days before the town meeting to make sure that everything gets printed and so on and so forth. So, 90 days may well be. But I would check with Debbie just to confirm how much time she needs for these kinds of things. But in past years, I don't think on projects that were properly before this committee and the towns voted for, were done in a fairly expeditious manner. So if people come in with a clear plan, a clear issue, I think that everybody moves along quite well. But I think the issue now is that we've got a bunch of plans that have just kind of all of a sudden come out of the woodwork and nobody knows anything about them. And that's creating the issue of, well, we can't really make a decision because, or they come to the Board of Selectmen, and we look at it and say, wait a minute, this isn't something that we really think. And then we can come to you and say, you know, address our concerns to your board at the time that they look at actual funding, so.
It could be a preliminary plan, say, go to the Conservation Commission, and then, once they okayed it, then it could come to this board.
Right.
Yeah, at least they need enough so they can figure out.
There should be something in between.
I think Karen should serve as the gatekeeper insofar as, I think we should say on the website before submitting an application to give you a call.
Right, but like I said, I've kind of have been working on this vetting process so that you can see that it goes from point A to point B and it goes all the way right through to the warrant article. So, I mean, you should all read this over and, you know, maybe talk about it at the next meeting, but I think that it's pretty clear how, you know, it would go from the application and the sponsor and making sure that it takes you right through to the end.
We need to read this over, and then we need to have really a working session with Karen and ourselves to come up with the formula that would guide people a little bit better.
Right, because I mean, there
Some
are...
things would be a singular, easy to come and present, and some things may need a preliminary meeting for engineering to even get a budget for it. Because you can't come in here with a nifty budget for what we want to do.
Especially when you're getting projects from private people, you know, like we had the, what's his name, the gentleman that wanted the money for the roof at Brad Street, for instance. You get these kinds of people. If it's a town board that's supporting this, it kind of makes it easier. When you got someone from the outside coming and looking for some historic money, for instance, if they've got a clear plan they can follow, at least to get answers in an expeditious manner, where now they, it's difficult to be sure what's going on, and that all the relevant boards in town are aware of what is happening before they come to you for final approval for funding of the construction or whatever it is, to purchase or whatever.
And I mean, the nice thing is the coalition has lots of resources that you can utilize to qualify projects, and those charts are up on their website. They have every project that's ever been done, because you have to submit your form to the state every year. So they have this huge database that you can go in and search, you know, elevators, stairways, bridges, anything, any project that's been done is up there. So it makes it very easy to use. You can pick up the phone and call these people. They're wonderful. They answer all your questions. So there's a lot of resources available.
Okay.
Just so I have the right information, excuse me, going back to the Open Space Committee, did you suggest that administrative funds could be used to
Do
develop?
engineering studies, yes. We've used it in the past for recreation projects where, in order to present the design of, say, a ball field or the build-out of the Brad Street property for recreation, we had engineering studies done to scope out
Because
what
it's a
needed to
town
be done.
property?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So for this one in particular, rather than come to this group for getting funds to do the engineering plan, we could go.
You would still have to come to this group to get
Yeah, but as
funds.
Dave said, they would have to get approval because it's conservation land.
Right, okay.
If the conservation came to us and said that they are familiar with the project,
Support it.
they're supporting it, and they want to get engineering funds to study the product, then we can go ahead with that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis as to whether an engineering study funding would come from the project totality in stages or from administrative funds if it fits within that. It seems to me that the pass-out material that Karen gave us indicates some ambiguity with regard to these kinds of things, in particular the one that was before us tonight. There may or may not be administrative funds there for what is needed for that kind of study. in essence, my sense of that is that if it's appropriate to do it that way, it's generally a time saver in terms of not having to go before town meeting to get a project moving along. But the time-saving aspect of it shouldn't be the determinant, I don't think.
Right. And I think that's what we basically decided, that the open space plan is a project unto itself, and therefore probably needs to go before town meeting, whereas something like engineering studies is to prepare something to go to town meeting. And so I think that would qualify.
And many times what's happened, like, it's less about engineering to build something than it is to, for instance, once we made the decision to buy the Bradstreet property or buy the Girl Scout camp property, what we used administration funds for was to buy the property, we have to have surveys done, we have to have evaluations made of the value of the property, and that's the kind of things that we basically have been using the administrative funds for. I'm not sure if you get into engineering plans for a particular project, that's almost I think that's almost getting close to have the town meeting vote.
I don't think so. I'll have to read over what Karen said, but again, in the spirit of things, and I haven't read the detailed law,
Right.
The idea is if you have to go to town meeting to get engineering plans, you're looking at least a 2-year project. I mean, 2 years before anything gets done. And this allows a worthwhile project with minimal engineering funds, because we don't have that big of an administrative budget. But it allows it to go forward in the light of things like, in this case, the Open Space Committee and Conservation Commission thinking it's a good idea. And if the CPAC agrees that it's a good idea, then I think it's perfectly legitimate. And we've done it in the past. Again.
Okay. So we have got to come up with the guidelines to submission. Is that it?
I think we have to have more, we have to sit down, as David said, we have to sit down and talk about this together and work it all out. I don't think it's going to be done in one meeting, and I don't think it's going to be done tonight.
But I think it's a good idea.
We do have some other issues.
Yep, a couple of them, yeah. Just for my paper.
Yes.
Okay. We got a letter from Mr. Mishkin. And if I can find it. And he has an idea that he wants a copy of all applications for churches, preservation, restoration, and things like that. And he represents the Americans United for Separation of Church and State. And he's out of Washington, D.C.
So this little packet I put together is actually just things that have come through, letters, and there's one from Grassroots, and there's one from Stuart Saginor, and they're just all things that I've answered based on public records laws. That was the bundle that you were just talking about. We actually didn't have anything that fit within his criteria, so I
noticed
sent
he
that.
was quoting law, though, that, we had to do this, we had to do that.
Oh, yeah, within public records, you have a 10-day timeline to answer. So that's why they were answered quickly. And then there was a little email from Stuart Saginor, because he had
Bert?
Yep, Steve Burt is a resident of Wellesley and a homeowner on Oyster Point Road in Raleigh. He works right now with the Wellesley CPC board, and Stuart Saginaw was mentioning that it would be interesting to have him on 2 CPC boards.
But he doesn't, if he owns property, he doesn't have a residence.
He does have a residence.
He does have a residence.
He does have a residence?
Yeah, at
He lives at
Oyster
both places?
He lives in Wellesley, but he also has a home in Oyster Point. The question is, where's the
His primary
citizen
What's
of?
his primary residence?
I would assume it's Wellesley, but that's no reason why he could not be a member of the town board. We used to have the postmaster of Ipswich on the recreation board, as I remember, and he became a member of this committee for a while. And there's another member of Georgetown that's on the recreation committee and serves. That doesn't necessarily mean he could. Seems to be one way for him to be on this committee, and I don't mean to put you down anyway, Mr. Alger, but is that he could join the Open Space Committee, and the Open Space Committee sends votes to have a person on this committee as per Board of Selectmen guidelines or requirements, and if Mr. Alger wanted to rotate through, or the other person he could wind up on the committee that way, but I don't know that there's anybody on this committee historically that has not been a town resident. So, but
You have to be a representative of a particular board to be on this committee.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
So
how
if
it is.
if he can get on a committee that appoints him to be the representative, I don't think that would be a problem. But
Right.
unless there's something in the law, I don't know if there's something in the law that.
But I noticed other towns, they have extra people that are not members of boards.
Well, I think we gotta change, I don't know if we set that up by town bylaw or whether this, the makeup of this committee, I mean, I'm not sure how it, without going back and looking whether it's, did we pass a bylaw for the makeup?
I believe so.
If we passed a bylaw, then to change the makeup of the committee, we need to vote to amend that bylaw to do that.
Yeah.
I think the law itself probably allows any number of combinations of things, but that's what the town's adopted, so if we want to change that. And my guess would be that knowing people in this town, they're not going to be too happy about having out-of-towners join, unless they're, if you're already a member of the board. As somebody mentioned about the Recreation Commission, that people live in Georgetown, but they're very active members of the board they're on, and they provide excellent service to the town of Raleigh, so we're not trying to exclude people, but on the other hand, to just add people who have no affiliation to any board to this committee, I think be hard pressed to, I think, to get support for that. But if you feel you want to do that, you need to take a look at the bylaw, I'm sure.
I just answered him that at this time there wasn't an opening, but as things changed, we would let him know.
Well, you know, on
Still interested.
Historic District, we just got a new member, and he's the part of the architecture department at MIT on the Historic District. So you never know who's living on Oyster Point.
I do know who's living on it.
Better or worse, right?
One of the interesting things about Mr. Burt's qualifications background is that he's an expert on affordable housing, and this town really needs to, and has needed to for a long time, to do more on affordable housing and to find some people in town with that kind of expertise, and he would seem to be a perfectly well-qualified person to do that if there was a way to work him into the town work towards that goal.
Well,
I see him about every 2 weeks around this time of year, and every week in the summertime.
he likes Spring Edge.
Hmm?
He likes
Oh,
Spring Edge.
yeah.
No, but I toss these things out because it's part of Karen's package, and this fellow Michigan and what he's interested in, and then this Steve Burt from Wellesley and Oyster Point, they could be at-large members or something like that. Sounds like the city, doesn't it? But
I don't know if we'd need a bylaw change to have an at-large member. And so an at-large member would basically have the authority, be a member, but with no voting rights? Is that?
That's-
Depending upon how the amendment to the
You
bylaws.
set it up.
I think the bylaw is very specific at this point, so. And there's nothing to prevent any of these people. This board is very open to people coming in and expressing opinions. I don't think I've ever seen where this board has said we don't want to hear from somebody, so. If one of these people is interested to come in and, talk on a particular topic or whatever this, you guys have been excellent in terms of, listen to them, and you listen to me, so I guess you listen to anybody. But I mean, it's just, you don't have to be an at-large member if you start locking yourself into a 12 or 15 person board, it becomes really unwieldy in terms of getting things done, so, just my opinion.
Yeah.
Well,
Historic District Summits.
pardon?
Historic District Summits.
Signs, yes, signs.
Historic district signs, yes. And I'm on the historic district.
I can help you.
Go ahead.
So, we keep having
We've
this.
been talking two different things.
Right, but I found the right article this
Three different
time,
things.
because it's a big file cabinet. So I did find the right article, and it is in your packet. And you actually put it in front of the board, and way back when. And when they made the signs, there was a problem with the first set. The second set, they made to slide into those metal guides that are at the end of the historic district. So it's, I guess it's a wood piece. And Bob Mary stopped me going to vote, and he said those signs are in the second floor of the annex. They have extras made. So I don't know who to tell that to, but since we're having the conversation, the signs exist.
Well, you
They've
told it
already
to
been
me,
made.
that's,
If I could focus the issue a little differently, please. The subject came up pertaining to the financial worksheet that if there's an open item, 50 signs for historic properties with $880 left out of an original appropriation of $2,000. And the question was whether that bill would accommodate Dave's interest in having town road signs designating the district. And there was a bill, there was a project in here for that.
Right.
And those funds were completely expended. And we need new signs apparently, but I don't think we can use this money for that unless we repurpose it.
But we don't need to, because
the
the
signs-
signs are in the second floor of the annex building.
Oh, so
Since
yeah.
I know something.
We have
about
signs.
this, the signs exist, the posts are the problem, and the brackets are the problem.
So, that,
Because
they're
I'm trying to
talking
choose a
metal-
correct word here.
metal
They're in
posts.
crappy shape. They-
no longer useful.
And they need to be of a substance that cannot be drilled to be put political signs on them. Because there were complaints about that the Historic Commission was taking a position on a certain item, so.
They're talking black metal posts.
And they'll look,
Yeah, and I don't think if you've got the signs, and I think historic signs are certainly a justification for spending money to show off our historic district and even the individual house signs. I don't know if
So that.
a lot of those signs could be replaced too or updated,
so.
so.
For those historic house signs.
Where they say, I mean, a lot of those are, my own personal opinion. I mean, I go over to Ipswich and you go down the back roads there, I love to go drive by and see old house 1768 or something. I mean, to me, that's really nice for tourists coming through to be able to see houses. And to have the district clearly marked is certainly justifiable expenses, my opinion, once again. But if we need to do something to appropriate more money for that, I think you may even be able to use your administration funds to do something, if you've already got signs, you just need posts and stuff, maybe you can just, I don't know. But it seems like a simple project that.
Because I know since I've moved to town, I'm a newcomer, the downtown has really improved. And it's been the hard work of the Historic Commission that has done that.
Well, I know when we finished 2 years ago there, or a year and a half ago, the center school project, and I was the one that went down and put back up the historic sign for that building. Well, that sign needs to be replaced. It's faded, and it would be nice to put a new sign on that building. Now, where the money is for that or whatever, I don't know, but
I think that's what
those are some of the...
There is an article that currently exists.
Okay, so we can probably do
So what
that.
happens is the
homeowner and it's
homeowner
split at
pays
50/50.
half, and then the
Okay.
I think they can make a-
CPC article pays the other half.
Because the sun beats the dickens out of some of these signs. Like the one in front of Town Hall, was one side was fine, the other side was, the south facing side was really faded badly. Well, I think we replaced that one for the 350th or 375th anniversary, so it'll look good. There's a bunch of those that I think we could justify spending some money to replace.
Yeah, we had the problem with the library sign.
Right.
We had to replace that. And we voted that we would not use wood.
Aztec?
Hmm?
Aztec?
Could be, I'm not sure.
You don't know how much money you would need for doing it at this point?
You're asking me. what
Yes.
kind
You.
of- me.
So do we need
I
to,
don't know. I don't know.
Well, there's a project for next meeting.
do we need to repurpose the funds?
No, because those funds were for the house signs on a 50/50 basis,
Okay,
and that's just ongoing, but there probably needs to be some PR on people who might want to have a sign on their house.
oh,
Some people
okay.
don't like to have a historic sign on their house.
True, true.
And it's up to the owner to come forward.
But now for the historic signs, what do we need, what do we need for the posts?
Post and bracket, somebody needs to draw it up, which I guess I'll do, but. And we need to get an actual price on it, probably soon.
And if that were to be an article, it would have to be done fairly quickly.
Very quickly.
I think,
Within the next week.
Well, it needs another meeting by this group unless we vote
no,
on
I
that
think we
tonight.
ought to push it to a future meeting.
September meeting.
There'll probably be a fall time. Joe and I can't say definitely one way or the other, but I think it's leaning towards most likely. I think it's only been a couple of years in the past 20 years we haven't had a fall town meeting.
I think we should do that, quite honestly, to get, after talking about Karen's procedures, let's get it right.
It makes sense to, right, come in with a plan and have the drawings and have it set up.
And
I agree.
it should have the approval of the Historic Commission for their signposts.
Yes.
When it comes to us.
I hear you.
I would move we continue this subject to the next future meeting before the next town meeting.
Yeah.
I'll second. Did you want a second?
You can second.
All in favor?
Which one are you good?
The historic sign, district sign.
Okay.
We're putting that off till...
Well, I know sometimes you slip in, it's time to retire.
Kurt does not say.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, I'll accept the motion unless somebody else has something to,
I'll move that we adjourn.
I've got something.
okay.
With regard to the financial information sheet, I talked with Karen about this. It shows every time the amount of money we have in the bank and the amount invested. And I think we should break that invested amount down to the cost, namely the amount that's gone into those investments, and also show a market value as of the most recent available date. I think in terms of transparency and openness, this is something that is of interest in general and that would expand the financial knowledgeability of what's in our finances. Did you have a chance to?
Yep.
Any perspectives you'd like to share with us on that?
That since I started this position, this board has had more financial information than they have in the past. That market versus cost is not, although it may seem to be important, is not relevant. It's based on a picture in time. That sheet just says, this is what was there on 2/29, and it's letting you know how much money is in the pot. And tomorrow, if something changes in the stock market, that there's no control over it one way or the other. It's a picture in time. It's just a snapshot. So it could change within a day. It could change within 5 minutes. It could change between 8 and 4, just like the stock market does. So this is a picture of how much money is in the bank.
Yes.
And how it's invested does not affect the board and their decisions on projects. And how money is invested is not a function of this board. That's a function of the treasurer. And the town has an investment policy, and that's what's followed.
I agree that it's a function of the treasurer. State law says that the treasurer controls how these funds are invested. I still think it's appropriate in terms of openness of records and financial information and disclosure and accountability and transparency that there's no reason why, as of any given date and time, that we should be able to know what the amount of money that was put into those funds and what the actual value is. If we have a $50,000 gain in there, that's all to the benefit of us and behooves us perhaps in terms of speeding up
It shows
our
right
ability.
there. That's how much money is in
It
the
just
bank.
shows the amount of money that's invested as of the end of February. If we have a $10,000 loss in there, it seems to me that's as much of interest
This
as
is not about the
$10,000 spent for
stock.
trees.
But that's about the stock market. That's not about how much money
That's how the money is
in the bank.
invested. It's invested in bonds and stocks, and there's a cost to that, and there's a market value cost to that. There's no reason why we shouldn't know that.
In the course of time that this board has been in existence, I read back to 2009 in the notes. This conversation has happened many times. You get the same answer. You will get the same answer. The treasurer takes the funds and follows under the law how it is invested. That will not change. This is how
have a
the
problem.
information is presented. This is how much money is in the bank. There is no room to sit and write reports about whether the stock market went up or down within that month. It doesn't help this board to make a decision on whether the money is going to be spent on a project. It is not the best use of anybody's time.
It doesn't have to be a report. Just want 2 figures instead of 1. And I would hate to have to file a Freedom of Information request, either as an individual citizen or on behalf of this board, to show that information. You'd have
You've
to
asked for
provide.
the information before, you've asked for copies of the, how it's invested, you've been given all of those things.
But it's never been presented in terms of showing it this way. Just because something's been done a certain way in the past doesn't mean it has to be continued. This same type of investment, these same type of investments are used for the town's funds in general, and the selectmen should be concerned about that and
The
find
selectmen
it
signed an
interest.
investment policy. The investment policy is followed.
Might be-
I'm not saying it isn't, I'm just saying that it's of interest to the townspeople, it's of interest to this board.
No one is
as to how,
hiding anything. Everything
You're
is
not
very
showing the cost and you're
transparent.
not showing the market value.
That's what you want on a piece of paper. That's not what this board needs to make its decision.
It helps.
That's how
It
you
helps.
understand the number.
It
That
helps.
is not how the board understands the number.
Over time, it helps to provide information to the town that's of interest and to the townspeople, and it's relevant.
That's how you want the information.
Just quickly, there's no money invested in stocks, so if the stock market goes down today, we're not losing any. But this is all invested with bonds and long-term loans and the interest. The state clearly dictates how we can invest our money and how we not invest it.
That's not my impression, Dave. I think that the vehicle that's used, the units that are purchased, does include some equities in it. And even on bonds, for only bonds, there's still a market value and there's a cost value. And
Yes, but you have specific beliefs on how you think money should be invested. which you have expressed over the course of
I'm
time
not raising
with the
those
treasurer.
beliefs at this point in time.
Okay,
Those were different matters, and my perspectives back then were that the fund should only be invested in banks. Because we have a need for this money, and we shouldn't put the taxpayers of the town at risk with regard to market values and instruments that fluctuate in market value. It's the treasurer's prerogative to invest those funds, and I don't contest that. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have all of the facts in front of us in terms of how those funds are invested. All I'm looking for is to have our record show both the cost figure and market value. And it's one more figure than what is on the sheet. Don't need any explanations, just to show that. I don't know why the office of the treasurer, which wants to be transparent and open, isn't willing to provide one more piece of data.
I would ask the treasurer to come in and explain it to you.
I think we're going to get the answer we just did, but I'd be happy to have that happen.
Or if you want to go in, and I would recommend you go in and sit down with the treasurer, and she can explain to you the policy. Then if you're not happy, ask her to appear before this committee at an open meeting. That might be the best way to handle it, because
I'm comfortable doing that.
I have a question. All the monies that the treasurer invests for the entire town, do they vary from group to group? Or if you go to another department, of course the amount in each group is different, but are they the same investments?
Karen, you'd have to answer those
Something,
questions.
okay.
But there, I mean, under
Because if it
Mass
is-
General law, you have to, it's a very specific policy, you can't.
Yeah, because my point is, if it's the same for all the different groups, then that would be an easy number. You say, well, it's up X% or down or whatever, and it would be the same for all the different groups.
unless it's an escrow account,
Yeah,
specifically,
That's why-
all the money's invested in as one big pot of money, and then the treasurer and the accountant separate out how much of, there's a $1 billion pool.
Yeah.
There's a $250,000 in CPC money, there's, $100,000 in selectmen's money, that's how it's done. It's not invested as,
It's separated.
CPC money is not I don't believe it's invested as CPC money, it's put into the pool.
Yeah.
But in the bookkeeping process, this is how much your account, so based on the money you have in there, this is what your
on
account
the
is
amount,
worth.
yeah, so it's probably the same from group
It's
to
like I said,
group.
the state won't allow you to invest in securities that go up and down.
Okay.
It's just not allowed. I know that. So that it's just a matter of, if you want to, like in other words, if the amount of money that CPC has invested and it earned, $500 in interest, so that's about what you're looking at. And I'm not even sure how much the interest is these days, but, you break it down by, and I don't know how else you can do it that's of use to, but I would say, Kurt, go sit down and talk with her, and then with specific questions.
I'd be happy to do that. I do think there is a market value to some of this.
Yeah, you might be right.
And I think to get at Paul's question, I think there are different funds. I don't know if all of our monies are pooled, but to the extent that they go into a pool, these funds are received at certain points in time, they have a cost basis or a book value. And every group that has monies coming in and going out, I would think would be in the same situation. My understanding is the electric light company in town, probably Municipal Light Power, has their funds invested, and I don't know that those funds, I don't know what kind of transparency there is with regard to that. And all the funds that are invested at different times are going to have a market value as of the time that the group produces a report to the town as to how those funds, are valued, and they must have them on their books at a cost value as well as a market value. It's just like investing periodically in a mutual fund. But anyway, I will be happy to talk with Karen further on this. And I don't really understand why producing one more figure, assuming it's readily available, should be a problem. But anyway, we can move on, or not.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody have anything they want to discuss? Open up.
Everything.
Okay, I'll accept a motion to close the meeting.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it.